For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsberg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsberg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, looking back at the first three games of the Jets Blues series, and of course, getting you prepared for the pivotal Game 4 coming up tomorrow afternoon in about 27 hours time. 12 noon tomorrow, the Jets and the Blues, Game 4. Will it be a commanding 3-1 series lead for the Winnipeg Jets, or will it be a best of 7 turned into a best of 3? We'll know more tomorrow afternoon. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning. Big show ahead. Paul Edmonds going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Harnarayan Singh going to join us at the bottom of hour number 2. We're all about the Jets and the Blues. We're all about the playoffs on this Saturday morning.
Good morning, boys. We just had the comment up from Jay Miller. That's what we're here for today. We're here to make sure that Jets fans come off of the ledge. It's only one game. Obviously, we all saw it. It was an ugly game, guys. Like, let's not pretend that it was anything but that. It was a pretty bad loss that the Jets faced, but we knew that the Blues were going to be desperate, right? And I think now there's more pressure on the Jets than there is on the Blues. All the pressure was on the Blues in Game 3, and like Drew said, you want to take care of business. You want to make sure, Dave, that when you come back home for Game 5, that's a game where you can take the series and not obviously go back tied a couple games, right? So I think that was not the best from the Jets. In fact, that was far from the best from the Jets, but they just got to shake it off and get back to what made them successful in the first 2 games. Yeah,
I agree with you, Ezzy. I mean, the reality is that you see it through the playoffs. I mean, no team has, look, the Leafs right now have a 3-0 lead against a very inexperienced and young, from a playoff perspective, Senators team. But other than that, every series has been close. I mean, you look at the, even LA and Edmonton last night, that was a wild third period, and Washington and Montreal. I mean, good teams lose. It happens. It's inevitable. You get punched in the face. It's how you respond to that. What have we seen from the Winnipeg Jets this season? They respond. Mm-hmm. They don't. First of all, they don't. As I said, they don't bask in a win. Similarly, they don't necessarily lament losses. They tend to just leave them in the past and then move on. So the team, obviously absent Dylan DeMello the last game, and we found out it was due to illness. And so the question becomes, is there more illness in the team? And is that perhaps why they gave the team the day off yesterday? They're back on the ice today. So unfortunately, after this show ends, so you'll have to go to illegalcurve.com for any and all updates via the playoff practice report. But the fact of the matter is that, look, teams deal with losses, and it wasn't a good loss, but whether you lose, as Scott O'Neill said, I don't want to parrot him, but whether you lose 1-0 or 7-2, ultimately the result is the same, and you've lost the game. And I actually think it was better that the Jets got embarrassed, to be honest with you, for that team. I think if they lost a close one, okay, it is what it is, right? But you got embarrassed. Connor Hellebuck got embarrassed. He got pulled. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, it really muddied up this team. I don't think like I said, I still think that they're going to win this series. I just thought, I didn't expect them to sweep. And I thought that St. Louis, as he said, had a lot of pressure in Game 3. They used it. They used the crowd to their best effect, and they got the result they wanted. But we'll see what kind of team the Winnipeg Jets are Sunday at 12 when they take to the ice and respond in St. Louis.
Well, that's about, you say that when they respond, and that's where the Jets need to do is undoubtedly respond, and it has to start right, because it's now 3 games in this series where the Jets have been the weaker of the two teams over the first at least 5 to 7 minutes, I would say. You know, that they got away with it in games 1 and 2, ultimately prevailing at the end, and then their game improved as the game went on. But 3 straight games with 3 straight slow starts has to be an area of concern for Scott Arniel. It has to be an area of focus for the players, and it has to be where you start to see the response from the Jets. You can't lose 7-2 like you did on Thursday, and then come out equally slow, equally uninvolved, equally problematic tomorrow. You need a better start from the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow, and then however the game plays out, so be it. Obviously, Jets fans hope for the victory, but the start, you can't be behind the 8 ball down 3-0 in the first period like you were on Thursday night, Ezzy. That would be inexcusable again.
That's just it, Drew. You nailed it. It's 3 games now where the Jets have had poor starts. Obviously, game 3 was the worst. You're down a couple goals just over 3 minutes into the game, right? But go back to game 2, right? Connor Hellebuck was under siege. We talked about that after game 2 on the post-game show, right? He had to make several key saves early on. Obviously, as the game progressed, the Jets went into their shutdown mode. But also, guys, like in game 3, the Jets didn't have the puck enough, right? Like that was an issue. Like, and the physicality is obviously something we'll get into when you put up, 63 shots. And the thing that's the most impressive about that, we always, joke around on the show about hits, right? Because they can be misleading, right? Usually it means that you don't have the puck. But when you win 7-2 and you have 63 hits, I mean, that to me was it's to be expected, right? Like if anybody watched the first 2 games, the Blues have some guys that throw their weight around, led by Braden Shen, the captain, obviously. But they have to make sure, guys, that doesn't take them away from their game. And that's what I thought happened a little bit. The Jets were running around a little bit too much. We saw it on the Cam Fowler goal where the Jets were just not quick enough in their own zone to react to what the Blues were doing. So obviously, you have to counter the Blues forecheck. You have to counter the physicality. The Jets, Dave, have players that can lay the body, like whether it's Adam Lowry, whether it's Brandon Tanev, whether it's Dylan Sandberg, Logan Stanley, like they have guys that can play the physical game, but you have to make sure that that's not taking away from your game plan. And that's what I thought happened in game 3. I just thought that the Blues were all over them, and the Jets really didn't start to bring their game until at some point in the second period. But that's something that you have to be prepared for.
There. I mean, you make a very good point about the physicality, Dave. Do you think that the Jets are having trouble with the physical nature that the Blues are throwing at them, or is it just maybe an anomaly? That through game 3 was a bad one all around, and as a result, it looks worse than it's actually been. Because St. Louis has certainly been, their MO has certainly been a physical one through all 3 games. Clearly the Jets are up 2-1, so it hasn't been the dominant storyline, but right. St. Louis has definitely been laying the body on the Winnipeg Jets, and to some extent, I think it's thrown the Jets a little bit off their game at times.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Drew, and I think that they were a step slow. Like when you watch that game 3, they were just behind it, and whether it was not having the puck or whether it was just on being on the receiving end of the physicality. And again, we've talked to the players, and one of the things that they tend to say, I mean, Mason Appleton talked about like trying to harness energy, and sometimes it's you're just not able to match what your opposition did. And they just never got to the same level as the St. Louis Blues in that hockey game. And even when they did, boys, when they had that chance, like, you think about the Cole Perfetti goal, which, early enough could have changed the nature of that game a little bit.
The goal, no goal.
Fine. The goal, no goal.
Yeah.
We're going to call it a goal. It was a goal.
Yeah. I mean,
I wasn't on the post-game show, but I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. That was a goal.
Well,
he doesn't care what the NHL Situation Room thinks, but I agree with him.
And I like to say I'm 6'8". It doesn't mean it's true.
With a full lush head.
No,
of
but
hair.
you know what I mean,
beautiful,
right, Drew?
Beautiful flowing mane.
No, but Drew,
yes, I know exactly what you mean.
I'm passionate. I'm passionate that was a goal. And again, I'm sure you guys spent a good probably 10 minutes talking about it at Boston Pizza, right, Dave? But let's just call it a no goal. But I feel like that's one of those goals that's just going to bother me for a long time.
Yeah,
Just
no,
Cole
I mean,
Perfetti being robbed of a goal just bothers me.
no, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Ezzy. And look, it was definitely a goal that was a no goal because they, like Drew says, they didn't allow it to be a goal. But the fact of the matter is they had opportunities. The David Gustafson, obviously, the Gus bus gets going, and then, you give up a goal seconds later. So, I mean, it's a killer. And that was the sort of thing.
So
And look,
hang on, let me interrupt you there for a second. So,
okay.
Yes, can the Jets take any solace in the fact that, with 15 minutes to play, it was really only a 3-1 game? Obviously, the wheels fell off, dramatically after.
Yeah.
But can the Jets take any solace in the fact that after a bad first period, the next, let's say, 25 minutes weren't terrible?
Sure.
It was a bad first period. It was a bad 15 minutes to start the game, a bad 15 minutes to end the game. Can they take any solace in the fact that the middle section was
more
competitive?
Okay, so here's the thing. You can, look, a coach will use any positive in order to kind of get your team out of the negative mindset, right? But I think at the end of the day, all the coaching staff and this team has to focus on is how they're going to come out in tomorrow's first period. That is how they're going to be judged. If they're able to match the energy. Look, it's not like St. Louis is going to be like, great, we won a game. We're good. Like, we know that they're going to come out just as hard, if not harder, because it's so important for them to not, as he said, go down 3-1, because that's game over at this point. And so we know St. Louis is going to come out. Can the Jets match it and exceed it? And they have to. There's no question about it. And look, at the end of the day, you don't want to blame him, or maybe you do blame him, but the reality is Connor Hellebuyck is the MVP. He's garnering heart votes. He's the Vezina winner, his third Vezina win. At the end of the day, he has to be the best goaltender in the playoffs. And, before he got hurt, Logan Thompson for the Capitals looked fantastic. Actually, Montembeault looked pretty good for Montreal too before he got hurt.
Before game 3, right?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, they both got a little bit banged up. They were going to the e-bugs yesterday in the
dueling
game.
E-bugs on the bench.
Yeah, so that was a problem. But my point is that, like, they're making the save. They're making the hard saves. Even from Winnipeg, Pickard made a beautiful save. I mean, the game was pretty much over, but they made the big saves their team needed.
Dave, what are you talking about? Nobody made saves in the Kings-Oilers game.
Well, Pickard did right at the end of the game.
Right at the end, when they were up 2 goals at that point.
Yeah, they were up 2 goals at that point. So it was basically over. But the fact is that it was a real nice save. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need Connor Hellebuyck to be the best version of Connor Hellebuyck. So you need him to be better, but you also need this team collectively to be better. And I think that the first period again, I don't think that they can. I think they can still win the game and not have the best first period. But I think from a mental perspective, from setting a tone perspective, this Jets team needs to come out again, controlled emotion. Maybe I'll call it a Drew Mandel controlled aggression. Just kidding. But the fact of the matter is, they need to have a better start, Ezzy. And if they do, then I think you'll see a different result in tomorrow's game.
Yeah, I think the start is imperative. It really is. Drew mentioned it right off the top of the show. I mean, it's 3 games in the series where you haven't had good starts. And we talked about the nerves in game 1. Okay, well, game 1 was a long time ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
The start in game 3 is unacceptable. And in terms of Hellebuyck, yeah, he's allowed 10 goals in 3 games. He has not played as well as we would expect him to play. He's going to be better. And I think he will be better, guys, right? History shows that after Hellebuyck has a stinky performance, usually he responds with a shutout, or, maybe I just jinxed it there, guys. I'm kidding. But maybe he allows a goal or 2 goals, right? So I think that's an obvious. The good start, Hellebuck's play, and the Jets have got to find a way to, I think, create more offense off of the cycle, right, guys? Like, this Blues team is not giving the Jets a lot off the rush. Like, there's a Blues player on the Jets at all times. They're playing the smothering type of defense that the Jets like to play, right? So I think I want to see that a little bit more. Look, the 4th line has been pitching in this series, right? David Gustafson, Morgan Barron, Jared Anderson-Dolan, those guys have been doing their job. Like, it's time for the big boys to step up again, led by Scheifele and Connor.
Well, Shifley and Connor were certainly led the team in the first two games. So let me ask you guys this question. We've talked about Hellebuyck, and I think everybody agrees that game 3 was obviously awful. The first two games he was solid, especially early in game 2. He made a number of key saves that allowed the Jets to keep it at 0-0 for a while after their slow start. So Hellebuyck's one. I mean, his numbers are skewed because of how terrible game 3 was. So let me ask you guys this though. Who do you need to see step up in game 4? We'll talk about changes and potential changes, throughout the course of the show. But before we get to that idea and that concept, who do you think needs to be a more impactful player for game 4? To me, I'll give you my answer and I'll let you guys chime in. We haven't seen Adam Lowry be at his best yet this series. Braden Shen, captain on captain. Braden Shen is obviously a more talented offensive player, but I don't think there's any doubt that Braden Shen has been, pulling his teammates with him and has been the spiritual leader on the ice for the St. Louis Blues throughout this series. I haven't seen that same impactful game yet from Adam Lowry. And as the captain of the Jets, I think he's a guy that I would like to see have a stronger impact, not necessarily on the score sheet. Obviously, that would be a bonus, but I want to see him, dragging his teammates more into the game, into the fight, carrying them to higher highs than we've seen through the first 3 games.
I think that's a good one. And you think back to game 1 last year, right? Drew against the Avalanche. Didn't Lowry have 2 goals that game, if I remember correctly, or he had at least had a goal and an assist that game? He was an absolute beast. So I think that's fair. And I think Lowry will step up his game. He's a big game player. I'm looking to that second line, guys. Like I'm looking at Nino Niederreiter and Vlad Namestnikov. If I'm not mistaken, they don't have any points yet in this series through 3 games. So I think Cole Perfetti, we've talked a lot about that. He's been running that line. I should say driving that line, right? And so for me, it's the second line. So whether you want to pick Niederreiter or Namestnikov, they got to start producing some goals, Dave.
Well, I'm not going to disagree. That was exactly who I was keying in on. And if you look at the ice time, they're getting a lot. Scott Arniel, to his credit, really rolled that trio of lines, I should say, because there wasn't really a huge disparity. Obviously, the Scheifele line got the most with around, or Scheifele played around 18 minutes, I think. But those guys were up and over the 14, 15-minute mark alongside Adam Lowry's line. So he really did give kind of an even distribution in that regard to those 3 lines. But you have to look at the domestic. Look, they didn't make a second line center trade. They said, we're happy with what we've got. And don't get me wrong, Vlad Namestnikov was very effective. And obviously that second line had Nikolai Ehlers on it, which is a big difference. Sure. Look, and we don't know Gabriel Velarde's status. Someone asked that earlier in the day in the show. And we'll know if he's in his regular jersey or in a non-contact jersey, which he's been. So we'll get some sort of insight into that. And that could, of course, have a big effect on the Jets and their lines, I should say, which is what Drew was saying we'll talk about later. But going on the basis that right now everything remains status quo and you see the same group that you did in game 3, I don't think there's any question that Vlad Namestnikov and Nino Niederreiter have to step up. I think Cole Perfetti's been excellent. I think Cole Perfetti's looked really good. He's continued his strong play that we saw from him in the regular season. So, I'm looking at that duo and saying, like, listen, you guys are getting good minutes and you need to.
They've got to sustain. They've got it. Sorry, Dave. I was going to say they've got to sustain more pressure in the offensive zone. You have to see more extended zone time from those guys, and see when they drive the net and make those plays around the net. Right? Like I haven't seen enough of that. Especially game 3. I honestly didn't notice that line very much in that game.
No, I agree. And that's why I said, like, to me, that I agree with you 100%. Like, I think that if you're asking me, like, Scheifele and Connor, I noticed them, they had their chances. Binnington was good. You have to give him credit, of course. And then you look at the third line. Yeah, I agree with that. As like Lowry, could step up a little bit and, Appleton as well. But ultimately, look, the fourth line's been excellent and they've had limited minutes, but they've been excellent. The first line's been noticeable. Third line's been noticeable. Again, you're not burying your chances.
But you need a tone setter is what the Jets need. They haven't had anybody set a tone for a game yet.
Well, Okay, but I mean, I would disagree. I would say the first line has definitely set a tone in a game. I'm thinking, looking at the third game specifically.
Sure.
But regardless, I'm saying, to me, I think the first line for sure through the first two games, Drew, set a tone. They had like 9 points. They were very effective. But I would say that the fact of the matter is that your second line has to be. Look, we said you can't win if you don't have an effective second line, and right now, despite what Cole Perfetti's doing individually, that line isn't enough. You need, Nino Niederreiter and Vlad Domestikov, who signed, extensions, stuck around in Winnipeg. They have to be part of it. And, you can't just like tread water. You actually have to be able to do something and be noticeable. And they haven't been noticeable in any capacity in my mind.
What about the penalty kill? I mean, I think I saw it in Ken Weeb's article today, an article available on illegalcurve.com, that in the special teams battle, that I think that's, and again, a lot of the game 3 numbers are skewing this, but the Jets have scored 2 power play goals and they've given up 6 shorthanded goals. I mean, obviously that's not good. I don't think anybody, tuning in now needs our insight into say that that's not the way you want it to be. But again, it just, it's all.
You have 6 shorthanded goals?
Yeah,
I wasn't going to touch that. I knew what Drew. I knew what Drew meant there, but you had to get in there.
I meant, but the Jets have given up. Yes, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. That the Jets penalty kill has not carried its weight so far in this series.
They're losing the special teams battle,
right?
And guys,
and that's something they never lost all year long. For the most part, that they were. We know how good the power play was until the last, let's say, month of the season when it began to slip. And we know that the penalty kill had some ups and downs, but for the most part, it was a stabilizing force for the Jets. But again, it's almost like if you peel back a few of the layers of this series, the Jets are fortunate to be up 2-1 rather than being down 2 games to 1.
I mean,
how many they've been terrific at the end.
That's a hot take. It's a little too early for that. That was a scorching hot take, Drew. I don't know. I mean,
the starts haven't been good.
The starts haven't been good. You're absolutely right. But let's not forget how good. Let's not forget the Jets only allowed 2 shots in the third period in game 1, and how many in game 2? Maybe 4 or 5. I mean, they shut it down pretty well. Yes, the third periods have been, and the Jets have been the best third period team in the league all year long, right, guys? But I'm with you 100%, Drew. The starts have to be better. The start tomorrow afternoon has to be better, period. Like, they can't let what happened in game 3 happen again, where you're down a couple goals 3 minutes in, and then you're down 3 goals after a period. Like, the first period, the Jets have to be better. Take the Blues crowd out of it, hopefully, right, guys? And get all the momentum on your side. But you're right. I mean, there's other things going on in the series that are a concern. We talk about the power play. We talk about the penalty kill. I was going to say Dave was all over this after game 1. Like, the officials are calling the weirdest penalties. So discipline's obviously going to be a key, but you have to make sure that you're still establishing a physical presence as well, right? So look, the Blues, I think what we're trying to say here is, like, when we were previewing this series, a lot of people, Dave took the Jets in 5. Some were taking the Jets in 4. Like, this Blues team's pretty good. Like, they're going to have to find a way to win some close games, and that's what I'm expecting again on Sunday afternoon, guys. Like, I'm expecting the Jets to win the game, but I'm expecting it to be another close game. Like, this Blues team is a solid defensive team. At the end of the day, I think the difference is going to be Hellebuck's goaltending, and I think it's going to be Scheifele and Connor again. I don't think those guys are going to be kept off the scoreboard again. But yeah, Drew, I mean, there's definitely things that the Jets have to clean up. I mean, going up 2-0 in the series, they don't give you the series after 2 games, so the Jets still have work to do.
Yeah, well, it's about that 10 or 15%, that the Jets have been talking about all season long. Yeah. Now they need to demonstrate that 10 or 15%. They haven't controlled St. Louis like they did in that regular season matchup. And I know it's a completely different situation between the regular season and the playoffs and everything else. But that game again, we haven't seen the Jets smother their opponent like we saw them do when they were playing at their peak during the regular season. The game against Vegas, the game against Dallas, the game against St. Louis, all games in the last few weeks of the season, we haven't seen a performance by the Winnipeg Jets like that so far through these first 3 games. Now, maybe that's the nature of the playoffs, is you can't do that to your opponent, but you need to see, I think, something a little bit more closer to that for more than just the third period, like we saw in games 1 and games 2. Because if you're just relying on that, that might be too little too late at that point, Dave.
No, I mean, look, you need to play complete games. You have to play 60-minute hockey games, and it's hard in the playoffs. It's, I suspect the Vegas Golden Knights are thinking how hard it is right now against those Minnesota Wild, those healthy Minnesota Wild, who folks will forget because it was so long ago, were one of the best teams in the NHL. So I suspect Jets fans are probably happy they're not getting Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson at full health. But look, it's and nobody's going to cry for Vegas in this market for sure, and I don't think in many other markets. The ultimately you do need to have that, Drew. And look, you're right. The PK has to be better. I mean, that's a function of it. They haven't been getting it. I as I've been lamenting all 3 games of the playoffs, the penalty calls have been atrocious, both against both teams, I would add. But you have to deal with that reality. Like, as he says, if that's the way they're calling it, then you have to be effective. You can't be doing stuff after the fact if they're giving guys the extra 2 minutes for, getting involved in a scrum, and then fine. Okay, then you just can't do that kind of stuff. They want to keep it clean. I mean, look, especially when your PK is leaking a little bit, you really can't be doing that. It's one thing if look, we've got the hottest PK, we're going to punch him in the face, and if we take a penalty, we're going to be able to kill it. Well, you're not killing it. So really that you're controlling those emotions in game 4, I think will be absolutely key. I mean, you can't help if the refs are calling things that are marginal, but you can try and avoid it as best you can. And I think that's going to be really important, that sort of discipline in game 4. And yes, you absolutely have to. I mean, you do wonder about the weight of expectations, right? I think that there is that pressure on the Jets, as he said, right? I mean, you're forgetting about the President's Cup winner. I mean, sure, there's that, sort of, the way that people look at the President's Cup winner and say, oh, there's a curse, blah, blah. But, there is that pressure to kind of throw that away. And then also just the fact that the way the playoffs have gone for the Jets the last couple of seasons. And that also has a lot of pressure on this team. But like I said,
and pressure is a good thing, right, Dave?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
That's not the bad thing.
Diamonds, as they say.
Exactly. Like it's a situation, Dave, where the Jets need to feel that pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like they like you said, I agree with you. I think losing by 5 goals was probably better than losing by a goal or 2 goals because it's going to wake them up.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think so too. And I'll just finish off. But to me, like I said, you might have that pressure, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to tell yourself, listen, we're the best team in the NHL. We did what we did, not by accident. I mean, you don't do what they do through 7 months of a season or 6 months, whatever it is, and by accident. They did it because they were a very good hockey team. They need to wake up and, and realize, like, listen, this is who we are. And there's some guys who need to step up, as we've outlined in the first 30 minutes of this show. And let's talk to Paulie, and we'll keep this chit chat going about these Jets and Blues.
That's right. Paul Edmonds, the radio voice of the Winnipeg Jets, is up next this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. As we go to break, be sure you're smashing the like button, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and turning your notifications on so you don't miss a minute of Illegal Curve Hockey. When we come back, Paul Edmonds, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now on this Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Bottom of the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's presented by Play Now. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site, 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. Big thanks to our friends at Play Now for their support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We head to St. Louis, where the radio voice of the Winnipeg Jets, Paul Edmonds, joins us on the program. Paulie, good morning. Nice to see you. How was Brooks and Dunn last night?
I didn't go to Brooks and Dunn.
I know, I'm just teasing you.
But I did go to the ball game.
I figured. Yes. I saw Kenny put out some photos from that. How was the ball game then? I figured you'd be more of a ball game guy than a Brooks and Dunn guy, given your gold eyes ties.
For sure. I was beside Kenny when he was doing all that social media interactions, so I was a little more low key. But the ball game was great. I mean, it was a tight ball game, and it was a beautiful night in St. Louis, and it was well pitched, and there was some timely hitting and pretty good defense, all the things that you want to see in a good baseball game. And it was good to get out and just be a fan for a while and relax and have a day off. It'd been a while since the team and everybody associated with the team had a day off to just unwind and do what they wanted to do. And there was a lot of people from the Jets that were at that baseball game between Milwaukee and St. Louis last night. So overall, it was a good night out.
Well, that's good, because you well earned on your part. You've been working hard, unlike Kenny, who's been slacking off, but that's a separate issue entirely. Obviously, it didn't go the way the Jets wanted it to go on Thursday night. It was a disappointing performance from puck drop right through the final whistle. They get the 2 days off. 2 days to either regroup or 2 days to stew on it, whatever approach they want to take. Do you think that extra day is beneficial? Or do you think the Jets are just want to get back and make amends for what was a real lousy performance on Thursday night?
Well, either way that you look at it, this is what the schedule is. So I think you use this to your benefit. The 1 day off, as we've talked about, to maybe heal some bumps and bruises, to give guys an opportunity to clear their minds. That's usually what 1 day off is, just to get away from the rink. And that's what yesterday was. There was nothing that was involved with going to the rink or any sort of team activity yesterday. And then you'll get back to practice today. And so the stewing thing, as you talked about, in your word, I think is not a bad thing in this situation. You'll get an opportunity certainly to marinate the disappointment of the way that you played. Certainly you'll get an opportunity to counter the way that the Blues played you. And now you've got to come up with something to match that, because if you're the Blues, you're not going away from that game. It's pretty much been the same game for 3 games in a row. They just did it better in game 1 at home in game 3 of the series, right? And you were overmatched that way. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, they were run right over. They were steamrolled, were the Jets in the first period. Still, I mean, they had a chance at 3-1, you thought, to get back in the game because the game had settled a bit. And then there was a mistake behind the net and handling the puck. And it went to 4-1. And for my money, that was the end of the game, period. But overall, I think when you've had this schedule and the 2 days that are going to be between them, it should be advantageous if you're looking to strategize, be better, get on the ice and practice today, have a pretty good tug, but also what the rest day comes with that, and that's the day to kind of reset the buttons, if you will.
As he is either on mute or his microphone is not working right now. So, Dave, why don't you jump in there?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay,
right?
now you go.
Can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Paulie. I mean, that's
No problem.
Professionals, Paulie, as you can tell.
Yeah, obviously, I'm the amateur of this show, Paulie. But I mean,
Everything we learned at TSN 1290. So this is exactly how it goes.
I like it. I like it.
A great
Well
training
said, Drew.
ground. What a
Yeah.
training ground.
Yeah, shout out
for
to
all of
Rack
us.
Carney. Rack taught us everything we know, and Chris Brook as well. Practice obviously is hopefully going to reveal that Dylan DeMello is going to be healthy for Game 4. We'll wait and see. Obviously, he's dealing with an illness, Paulie. But I wanted to ask you about the starts, right? Because Game 3, the Jets go down 2-0 in the first just over 3 minutes. But Game 1 and 2, I think you'd agree that the starts weren't ideal either. What are you seeing from the Jets in their starts? Because obviously that's something that you imagine Scott Arniel has been hammering home over these last couple days, that they need to take the crowd out of it and St. Louis and make sure they're getting the game's first goal, as opposed to going down a goal or two.
Well, and the only goal that they've scored that has been the first goal of the game was in Game 2, and I would submit to you that overall that was their best game in the series so far, even though they're up 2-1 in the series. The other thing too is, I mean, in the start in Game number 2, perception is that it was their best game, as I just mentioned. Connor Hellebuck had to make some 5-alarm bell saves in the first couple of minutes of the game, because St. Louis started on time and had some rush chances, and Winnipeg stifled that as they took away that odd man defenseman coming up the weak side where they were getting those opportunities. But for my money, Winnipeg has to start with the puck. I mean, the face-off percentages in this series are abysmal right now for the Jets. They have been beaten pillar to post here when it comes to winning draws and starting with the puck. And when you are a possession team and when you want to move the puck fast and quick and have that attack and then get into the opposing zone, you have to have the puck. And they're expending a lot of energy fighting to get it back. Well, win some more face-offs, and I think you'll have a better start. Is that simply and rudimentarily the best way to kind of combat what they've been doing or haven't been doing? No, but it's one of the areas that I think that they have to start in and be better at winning some faceoffs, particularly in their own zone, and starting with the puck and then being able to go and move the puck. Dylan DeMello, for where he plays and what he does, he was a big loss the other night. It's not the reason that they lost, but I just felt, and you brought him up, so I thought we might as well expound on that. I didn't think the defensive core felt all that comfortable in that game. And part of that was the missing of Dylan DeMello, moving some pieces around, the insertion of Colin Miller, who I didn't think played that badly, to be honest with you, in the game. I thought that pairing was actually pretty decent with Colin Miller and Logan Stanley. But it had some discombobulation when it came to the way that the pairings were. So, getting him back, presumably seeing him at practice today, but yeah, they need a better start. They need to, that St. Louis is coming as they have in all 3 games to start the game, particularly in Game 3. I mean, it was an onslaught. So you have to combat that. Combat that by starting with the puck and getting it down in the St. Louis end. That would be a really good start for me in terms of making sure that doesn't happen again. And yes, the first goal would be key, especially to take the crowd out of the game in St. Louis. They were loud. I mean, I have to tip my cap. Jim Montgomery was talking about this going into game number 3 and after game number 2, particularly, that they liked their home crowd. They'd won 12 in a row, now 12 in a row plus 1 postseason game, so 13 in a row at home. They were a factor. They were the 7th man or the 7th person for sure in that game to start, and the team fed off them. They fed off the team. It was a symbiotic relationship. Winnipeg has to do something to squeeze that out of the building tomorrow afternoon.
Paul, if you want to look at one positive, I think in what we've seen through 3 games is the play of Cole Perfetti. I think he has really risen to the occasion, as he has throughout much of the latter part of this regular season. And just what have you seen from this young man who's doesn't have a ton of playoff experience and obviously wasn't last year even much of a playoff option except for the last game. So what have you seen from him? Because to me, he's really coming into his own this season, well, especially and now in the playoffs.
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen a guy that has really improved at, let's face it, he's not very big, right? So at 5'10" maximum, he's become much more elusive in his NHL game than he has when he first started. He's not taking those big hits. I remember Jamie Alexiak just throttled him once and ended up hurting him when they played Seattle one game a couple of years ago. And, that set him back. And he's able now to twist and turn and be more elusive to avoid those hits, while at the same time working in on people's hands to get the puck, win those puck battles, even against bigger players, and then roll off the boards and make plays. That's the difference. That's the Cole Perfetti as to why he was a first-round draft pick in 2020, right? That's what they saw in him, and we're seeing that now. And he's become a bona fide NHL player. I mean, 18 goals this year, 19 the year before. So it's only a matter of time before he gets in the mid-20s and maybe a 30-goal scorer. I don't know that he'll ever be a centerman here in this league, but he certainly has done very well for himself on the wing, which brings an interesting point to something that maybe will be discussed. The fourth line has been really good here in the three games, excuse me. The top line has been very good for 2 games. They were neutralized certainly in game 3. The Jets need something from lines number 2 and lines number 3 here going into Sunday's game 4. I mean, Cole Perfetti certainly is trying. Everybody's trying, but there needs to be some production. So I'll be watching with an interesting eye today at practice to see if there's any alterations that way on either of those 2 lines, because they need more production from one of those lines to help out, to augment what's going on, particularly in the top line. I mean, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele can't do all the scoring. You're getting some production from the fourth line. That's the bonus. But really now you need something from that second line and the third line. Not as much, but certainly from the second line with the 2 players that are missing, I know, in Gabe Landeskog, or pardon me, in Gabriel Velarde and certainly Nikolai Ehlers have hurt. That's 51 goals out of your lineup. But at this time of year, you need to, as Connor McDavid said, you need to dig in and find something here. But Cole Perfetti's been just fine. I'd like to see a little bit of help for him so that he can make some plays or get a goal here or there to help out with the spreading out of the scoring for the Jets.
Well, that leads me perfectly into my question, Paulie. Paul Edmonds is our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jim Montgomery made his tweaks, he made his adjustments, and it obviously paid off well for the Blues in Game 3. From Scott Arneal's perspective, he sort of bristled a little bit when asked about that. Which is, you want to see, your head coach maybe get a little bit of the red ass after getting beat up 7-2, in a game. So that's not a bad thing necessarily. But do you expect those changes that you just referenced, do you expect those changes to come strictly from the middle 6, or could you see an elevation of a guy like Morgan Barron, who's really come into his own as of late as a fourth line center, where maybe he gets to use his speed and his size in an elevated role moving forward?
I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility, and this is all speculative on our part, right? But these are conversations that you have at a baseball game with Ken Wiebe, right?
A trip to the buffet, even at the ballpark.
That's right. Over, putting the onions and the sauerkraut on the hot dog. These kind of things come up. But I will say to you that Morgan Barron has played very well, and he's a big body that skates well. We've seen that, the confidence that he's had with the puck. He's moved into the middle. I think he's surprised a lot of people as to how he has played. And so if you like the way he has played and you're looking for something more, and he gives you that big body, and certainly the way, it might have been off camera too, but the way he played in the last minute, he was angry in the last minute of that game, and he was pushing some people around. It might have been behind the scenes, but we can see it from where we are inside the arena. I would give him a chance. I would give him a chance at moving up and seeing what happens. Now, here's the thing too. You're still up in the series. If you win tomorrow afternoon at noon, there's a lot of this that goes away, and you have a chance to wrap up the series at home on Wednesday. So let's not panic over moving this piece and that piece. But when you lose a game and you lose by 5 goals and you don't look very good and you look slow, there needs to be a tweak here and there for sure. So why not give a chance to a guy like Morgan Barron? Let's see what it looks like, and see if he can help provide some more offense or start to churn and help everybody churn like Winnipeg was so good at in the offensive zone. One of the reasons the Jets were excellent this year defensively was because they were playing so often in the attacking zone, and they didn't have to defend as much as in past years. So we'll see what happens at practice at 1:30 this afternoon. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a tweak or two, as we've talked about. But yes, Morgan Barron is an interesting case here for maybe an elevation role, certainly when it comes to game number 4.
Paulie, you mentioned some tweaks, and we talked about it earlier. The power play, obviously, they're losing that battle through 3 games, and that's something that I think when Jets fans looked at the stats, they said, "Oh, this is a big mismatch with the Jets power play versus the St. Louis PK." And obviously, Pionk gets the late goal in garbage time, so we should mention that. But I think you'd agree this power play is leaving more to be desired here.
So is the penalty kill. Ezzy.
Yep.
I mean, it's gotten scorched. The penalty kill has been very good the last month and a half, 2 months of the season, maybe since I think the new year, but certainly I think coming out of the Four Nations face-off break, and it has not been very good at defending. Now, Winnipeg's taken a few more penalties than they normally have in the last portion of the regular season. So whenever you're a few more times short, the probabilities go up that you're going to give up you're going to give up a goal here or there slightly more. But the power play needs to counter that. And the power play just has not been able to get a goal. Yeah, Neil Pionk gets one at garbage time. Yeah, it's a slap shot from the point. But, at the same time, when you get a power play in time of need, like when you were down a couple of goals in game number 3, that has to come through. And the interesting part is I know the coaches are working hard at it. I mean, you see them around the hotel. I'm not telling secrets out of school here, but there wasn't a lot of milling about from the coaching staff. They're poring over video and thinking of things for practice today. I could tell you yesterday, based on the amount of hours that they were spending on trying to see what they can exploit or how they can fix some things going into game number 4. But specialty teams have been a problem for the Jets. They've been scorched on the one end on the penalty kill, haven't counterbalanced that with scoring more on the power play. 5-on-5 has been great, but as St. Louis does or did, if they took away the top line in game number 3 and you don't have some 5-on-5 scoring and you're not scoring on your penalty kill and your power play or you're not doing your job on your specialty teams, it's pretty hard to win in the National Hockey League.
Well, Paul, you mentioned how good Connor Hellebuyck was early in that game too, and he needed to be, but he is the guy who is garnering hard attention and will win his 3rd Vezina and has a rap, whether it's fair or foul, about not being able to do it in the playoffs. How important do you think game 4 is for Connor Hellebuyck?
Hugely important. Now, I wouldn't bet against him because we've always seen Connor bounce back quite nicely over the course of any time he's had some rough outings. And by the way, that goalie pull the other day with 10 minutes to go was really the first goalie pull they've had this year for the Jets. And Eric Comrie goes in and gets his first taste of postseason action. So I think that Connor Hellebuyck wants to bounce back. He usually is good at doing that. He'll work with goaltending coach Wade Flaherty at finding some areas that he needs to be better at. But they've given up some grade A chances. Some of those wrist shots that he has to face. I mean, it's similar to the Four Nations face-off gold medal game where, Connor McDavid beats him with a wrist shot from the slot. I mean, these are really good guys that have really good shots that play at this level, that work on this stuff all the time. And I think of that first game where they gave up a few more shots than they wanted to in that area, and he's kind of helpless in that situation. So he needs to be better. The whole team needs to be better. But I will submit this. Connor Hellebuyck has a innate nature of bouncing back, so I wouldn't rule him out, wouldn't count him out. But I believe when it comes to the goaltenders in this series is up for grabs for somebody to grab this series. I don't think Jordan Binnington's been that great either. So not deflecting your answer, but the door is still open for one of these two goaltenders to grab this series and wrestle it away from the other and say, I'm going to steal this series. Now, I'm going to put the team on my back and I'm going to make the saves when I have to. And that's the thing I think that is the key point here is Connor Hellebuyck needs to be better. He knows that. But at the same time, just make the key save when you have to. And let's see what happens on Sunday if he can do that.
Saturday morning, Paul Edmonds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We remind everybody that after the game tomorrow afternoon, it's the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on our YouTube channel. That 12 noon start, which will probably be closer to 12:15 after all the hullabaloo gets done. It's such a bizarre time, Paul. I don't think the Jets have had a game start that early in the Central Time Zone in years, certainly not this year that I can think of. Do you think that there's an advantage one way or another with that early start time? Do you expect that it's going to just take a little bit of a feeling out process? Do you think that the early start time is going to have an impact on maybe the early moments of the game tomorrow?
Well, I'm with you. I think this is the earliest postseason game that they've ever started. There was a 2:00 or a 2:30 last year in one of the games in Denver against Colorado. There was an afternoon matinee go. So how does that affect both teams? I think for Winnipeg especially, you get to the rink and it's a show and go, right? There's not a lot of thinking. It's just, let's get up, let's get a meal in us, let's get to the rink, let's get stretched and have a pregame skate and go, and then know that you're going to go home for game number 5 of this, right? So there's not a lot of preamble to think about it. All of that thinking will have been done yesterday and certainly today. But when the alarm clock goes off tomorrow morning, it's all about focusing in on puck drop at 12:15, as you mentioned, Drew. So I don't know if there's an advantage or a disadvantage. I do think that you're not sitting around in a hotel a lot anymore, especially when you're on the road thinking about the game or trying to have a nap as you would for a 6 or 7 o'clock start. So there is something that's advantageous about that. And I think that maybe you're hoping that the crowd is a little sleepy still, or getting away from, or just coming from church and then settling down after, a good morning that way. And maybe you can jump on them and have a bit of an ambush and take them right out of it before they got into it. So we're pulling at straws here, I know, but I do think that there is something about an afternoon start and not thinking a lot and having that idle time, certainly when you're on the road in a hotel room contemplating what's going to happen in the game.
Paulie, I know we're a Winnipeg Jets-based show, but I wanted to ask you, who has surprised you on this Blues team, right? Because obviously Cam Fowler, nobody had him putting up 5 points on their bingo card in one game. He's been impressive. Obviously, Buchnevich had the hat trick and 4 points last game. But who's kind of surprised you? Maybe somebody, I know that you've covered all the games and you've watched the Blues play during the regular season, but is there somebody who you're saying, wow, this guy's maybe a little bit better than I thought, or maybe a guy that you're focusing on a little bit more in addition to the big boys, Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou?
Well, those are the drivers for sure.
Yeah.
As they have to score, and they have. I felt let Jordan Kyrou back in the series when it comes to him not taking a body check on game number 3 after being rocked in game number 2, and he could have been just a checkout guy after that because didn't see much of him in game 2 after that, even though he was on the ice. So those two are going to be your drivers when it comes to Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. You mentioned Cam Fowler. He and his D pair and partner of Colton Parayko were not very good in the first 2 games. In fact, that game-winning goal in game number 2, Mark Scheifele slips off of Cam Fowler rather easily and makes the play to Perfetti, who goes to Kyle Connor in the slot, and the game's over, right? They were both a -4 going into game number 3. Well, they had a great bounce back game for sure. Cam Fowler with 5 points. It's a record for the franchise, and I believe it ties a record in the NHL as well. So he was really good at moving the puck and handling things up top. So there's been some Blues that have impressed me that have some bounce backs for sure. The one guy for me though is a young guy in Jake Neighbors. Boy, this guy goes 110 miles an hour. He finishes every check. He can take a check. He has some offensive skill. He's a real friendly kid to talk to. Understands the game. Young Western Canadian guy. I really like the way Jake Neighbors is playing right now. And they did a little flop with the Jimmy Snuggerud and Jake Neighbors on the first line and the second line after game number 1. I think Jimmy Snuggerud is probably a better offensive player overall than we're going to see from Jake Neighbors by the time the 2 careers are done. but there's an element of the all-roundedness from Jake Neighbors that I really like in his game. And what Jim Montgomery has done is spread out that scoring and some grit on those two top lines by moving those two players. And it's really worked. I mean, certainly in game number 3 and game number 2, you saw some traction there as well. So the one guy that I would have to pinpoint that has impressed me, because we heard about him a few years ago, and then he was up for a while, didn't play, and then went back to major junior, I believe it was Edmonton, and then was called back up. And now we're seeing the full development of Jake Neighbors as a young up-and-coming player in this National Hockey League environment. And there's a few ways that you like to watch him, and it's him being able to finish on some plays, but also the way and the tenacious way that he plays when he doesn't have the puck.
Paulie, I know it's a bit speculative, but we don't know what's going to happen. You said practice is at 1:30, of course, in St. Louis. Gabriel Velarde, though, I mean, he's been in that non-contact jersey for some time now, and we've seen him, of course, skating, and we've seen him doing some dryland training before he started skating. Was looking good and strong. If you see Gabriel Velarde in a regular jersey today, which would be a big change, of course. And Scott Arneal's always saying, are you going to be at practice? Are you going to be at practice? Well, we know you're going to be at practice. So do you think if you see him in that different jersey that he plays in game 4?
Two ways of looking at this. If he has the one practice today, is that enough? Mm-hmm. And is he going to be up to speed if you put him in after one day of practice where he's out of the non-contact jersey for a Sunday game? Well, you could make an argument for the fact that they might be in need of one more skate before he gets into a game. But if you're looking to improve your power play, and if you're looking to bring in 27 goals, well, when's a better time than now to bring him in? Like, what is one more tug on a skate that, let's face it, when it comes to practices in the postseason, they're not the hour-long practices like you might see in the regular season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going out, you're getting the touches, you're getting some blood flow, you're working on some specialty teams. And other than that, it's 20 minutes, 22 minutes, and you're done. Some guys can stay out for skill work, but it's not a full, as Paul Maurice used to say, real good tug, and getting the heart rate up to 130 for 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So, I would say that if he's ready to go today and you see him in a non-contact jersey, that he'll be a player for game number 4. There's no perfect starting point to get him back in. I think you got to get him back in because let's face it, if you're preparing now for a longer series and it's going to go to game 5, well, maybe by the time if you get him in game 4, by the time you get him in game 5, and if things don't go very well and you have to play him in game 6, maybe he's up to speed at that point. So I think if he's ready to go, he comes out of the non-contact today at practice, then you're going to see him as a player in game number 4. There's no sense keeping him on the shelf for another game, Dave.
Last one for you, Paulie. We talked about the slow starts, and we've all are all in agreement that the Jets need to be better from puck drop on. Who are you looking at to be that tone setter for the Winnipeg Jets to start? I mean, we were commenting earlier that Braden Shen has really been the pulse of the Blues so far this series, but from my perspective, Adam Lowry hasn't necessarily been that emotional leader just yet for the Jets. Maybe they haven't needed him to be that emotional leader just yet for the Jets in the playoffs. Is he the guy from your perspective that you're looking to see how he starts the game tomorrow, how he sort of brings the team into the fight right from puck drop and onwards?
Totally agree. I think that line, more than just Adam Lowry, but whoever he has with him. So let's just bring in this scenario. If Velarde comes back in and you put him on the top line, that's going to drop down Alex Iafallo. Well, Alex Iafallo on the left wing side with Appleton and Lowry, or any incarnation of Lowry with Iafallo and maybe somebody else might be good as well. So let's get on the puck. Let's do what the Blues have done to you, and that needs to come from that line that was so bruising for 3/4 of the year or half the season that we were talking about as being one of the best lines in its construction in the National Hockey League. That line needs to reappear for me in game number 4 and drive that way. You need to get down into the Blues and do what the Blues have done to you to start 3 hockey games consecutively. So turn the tables on them. But I would, if you had to single somebody out, sure, Adam Lowry is your leader. He leads that way. He's probably the most physical presence you have on your team in a lot of different ways. He could also score goals. I mean, he had 16 this year. So from that standpoint, you need him to go. But if you can flank him with a couple of guys that play that way, that can support him in that role and doing that job and doing that mission to really turn the tables on the St. Louis Blues, then it has to come that way as well from that line and from your ultimate leader, which is your captain, because as you mentioned, Braden Shen is doing that for the St. Louis Blues.
Paul Edmonds and Mitchell Clinton will have the call tomorrow afternoon on 680 CJOB and Power 97. The Jets and the Blues, Game 4, shortly after 12 noon Central Time tomorrow. Paulie, have a great rest of your Saturday. We'll look for your reports from the rink and practice. Thanks so much for jumping on with us this morning.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks a lot anytime.
Our pleasure. Thank
Paulie.
you, Paul. There he goes. Paul Edmonds, our good friend, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. That was really great insight. It's always great to catch up with Paul. Before we head to break here, I want to remind everybody that Illegal Curve is one of the official media sponsors of the 2025 Rady JCC Sports Dinner coming up on Tuesday, June the 10th. Chris Carter, John Randall, Vikings legends, Minnesota Vikings legends will be here in Winnipeg. They'll be speaking at one of the best dinners of the year. I'll be there. Ezzy will be there. Dave will be there. I don't know where the hell Dave just went now, but he's playing under the weather, so we can grant him an excuse while I go through this read. But in any event, we want you to be there as well. Get your tickets to the 2025 Rady JCC Sports Dinner, a great night out. That's coming up Tuesday, June the 10th. Tickets available, radyjcc.com. When we come back this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, more on the Jets and the Blues, of course. We'll talk about our tweaks, what tweaks we think the Jets will need to make ahead of Game 4. And coming up at the bottom of the hour, Harnarayan Singh, who's the play-by-play voice of the TV broadcast of the Jets and the Blues. Much more to come. Drew Mandel, Ezra Ginsburg, the ghost of Dave Manouk's past. It is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumor's incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Hour number 2, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on this Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Big thanks to our buddy Paul Edmonds for joining us. Always insightful, always a great time to catch up with Paul. As I mentioned, coming up in about 25 minutes' time, Harnarayan Singh. He's been on the call of all the games on Sportsnet with John Garrett, so we're thrilled that Harnarayan is going to be able to join us to talk about the Jets and the Blues. Let's talk about the adjustments, guys. We talked to Paul about it. I know a lot of people are clamoring or excited about the potential to see Morgan Barron, if that's going to happen. Let me start with you guys with that question. Do you think you see a swap of that magnitude today in practice for the Winnipeg Jets? We haven't seen Morgan Barron play anything above fourth line center this season, and really at any point during his Winnipeg Jets career for any significant period of time. So do you think that Scott Arniel does a significant tweak of that nature, or do you think that he chalks up game 3 to a bad performance and isn't yet sort of making significant moves of that magnitude at practice in about 3.5 hours time?
As you mentioned, Drew, that would be a huge change, right? Like, that's not a minor tweak. That's taking a player who's been on the fourth line the entire year and moving him onto the second line for a player who's been there the majority of the year, right? So that's a big tweak. So I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think Morgan Barron is definitely capable and has the skill set, and I think still has the ceiling. You forget that he's still a relatively young player. I'm kind of leaning towards the lines are staying the same. Or relatively the same, right? Like, Gabe Vilardi is obviously the big question mark, guys, but we haven't seen him practice yet in a contact jersey, right? He's still in that no contact. So if we do see him in the no contact, that obviously gives us more hope that there's at least a chance. But if he's obviously still wearing a non-contact jersey, he's not coming back for game 4, and game 5 Wednesday would be the earliest we're going to see Vilardi, right, Dave? So I think, it's something to definitely discuss, Drew, because we haven't got a lot of offense from the second line, right? Nemesnikov and Niederreiter have yet to register a point in the series. Obviously, Cole Perfetti, we've talked about, he's been one of the Jets' best players. But I think going back and looking at this macro level, Mike McIntyre mentioned this in his article in yesterday's Free Press, right? A 7-game series is not cumulative score, right? Like, it's not about, how many goals each team scores over a 7-game period. It's about game to game, and oftentimes, guys, momentum doesn't carry over from game to game. Dave M has talked about this. Mike mentioned this in his article as well. In 2018, the Jets lost 6-2 to the Wild in game 3, and everybody remembers what happened after that. The Jets went on and won the series in 5 games. So there's no doubt, guys, that the Jets have to make some adjustments, or they're going to have to just be better, and they're going to need more from the second line. Obviously, you expect more offense from Scheifele and Connor in this game. Not to say that they had a bad game, but they had 9 points combined through the first 2 games. So you're obviously hoping that those guys are able to get on the board early in the game. Kyle Connor, we know he loves scoring game-winning goals, right, guys? So the Jets' special teams have got to be better. The starts have got to be better. And I think that they've got to be more disciplined. We saw it kind of all fall apart in the third period, and that's to be expected when the score is 7-1 or 7-2, whatever it was when the penalty parade happened, right? So there's a lot of areas of improvement here for the Jets. But going back to your original question, Drew, does Scott Arniel make that big change at the beginning of the game? Does he make that in-game towards the end of the game? I'm not sure. I know there's a lot of Jets fans that are clamoring for Morgan Barron to go up there at 2C, and I think that speaks to Dave how Vladislav Nemesnikov, he needs to be better. I mean, at the end of the day, you didn't acquire a 2C at the trade deadline. Vladislav Nemesnikov in the 2C role, he's got to produce. And again, I'm not putting all the pressure on him because I think Niederreiter's got to produce as well.
Well, so Dave, first of all, I want to hear your insight into the question about the lineup adjustments, if any.
Sure.
And then I need to know more insight into why you choose the orange throat lozenge versus a black cherry, which would be my throat lozenge of choice. But so both of those you can handle in whichever order you prefer.
Well, it was orange is just the one I grabbed out of the package. I mean, I would, these are the vitamins.
Is it an assorted package, or
it's an assorted package.
Oh,
it's an assorted pack.
Okay.
But I would go, orange.
Thank God we got to the bottom of that.
Well, I mean, these are the questions that people need to know here.
Well,
this is the hard-hitting journalism people come to us for.
That's true. People thought I was pulling a Luongo, but in fact, I was just getting some water and a throat lozenge. So that's why I left a little bit early. But yeah, so there's that answer. That mystery has now it's no longer an unsolved mystery. It is a solved mystery. And yeah, you know what? I don't think that they're going to move Morgan Barron to the 2C role. I mean, you don't do it now. There's no real point. Sure, you had a stinker, but at the end of the day, and you need more, as he's 100% right. We've been talking about it for the first hour of the show, is how you need more from that second line. So there's no doubt about it. But you're the best team in the NHL. You had the best road record in the NHL. You've been able to adjust after losses, and you didn't do that by panicking and readjusting everything. So it's incumbent on the players to do it from within. But I think it's a bit of a panic after an ineffective game. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they haven't been super effective through 3 games, but especially everybody's hyper focused on game number 3. And again, I mentioned on the post game show, but if you think about it, I mean, remember the Florida Panthers lost 8-1 to the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals, still went on to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah. Teams have bad games and can still do pretty impressive things in the playoffs. And as he outlined, the Jets similarly lost that game 3 to the Wild many years ago. Drew was praying for that symmetry. He did not want that 7th goal. Drew's mad at Eric Comrie because he wanted it to be a 6-2, so it would be a perfect parallel. But at the end of the day, I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that what you do is you allow these guys to kind of reset it, because it's what you've done all year long, right? And you haven't had that need to panic. Now, as he said, it's worth mentioning that if Gabriel Velarde comes in, obviously that's going to create some natural needs to tweak the lineup. But without that known until 1:30 p.m., and of course, a little site called legalcurve.com, we'll have that information until we know whether he's, and again, like, let's be realistic. And one thing worth noting, even if he's in a regular jersey today, Scott O'Neill's not going to tell you whether he's in the lineup, even if they do line rushes, or not line rushes, even if they do that during the practice.
Even if he carries the sign that says, I'm in the lineup.
Look, let's put it this way. The only way he would do it is if he pulled a Nikolai Ehlers, where he declares himself ready to go and he's playing in game 4. But Gabriel Velarde's a little cagier than Nikolai Ehlers, so I wouldn't expect that. So we might not know until tomorrow. And of course, by tomorrow, I mean warm up, because there are, of course, no morning skates. So we might not know till 11:30 a.m. tomorrow whether the lines are being adjusted. But no, I'm of the opinion that you stick with this group. This is the group that you've gotten here through. And again, that doesn't mean you don't make adjustments with them, Ezzy. But I think that to me, to do it after one game where you didn't play your team game, your goaltender wasn't all world. There were a number of different things that went wrong. I think you can effectively change that by making those proper adjustments with the group composed the way you have.
And are we maybe looking? Sorry, Ezzy, but are we maybe looking at the wrong change in centerman? Are we overlooking maybe Adam Lowry getting the bump up to the second line center, to play with Cole Perfetti? We did see them together, if I recall correctly, earlier in the year for that short period of time. I think, wasn't it Perfetti, Lowry, and Ehlers as a line? Yeah. I mean, and a line, by the way, that had success. Completely different scenario, given that, of course, Ehlers won't be an option for the Jets. But is it maybe that we're overlooking the center change that might occur, that it might be Lowry getting the bump as opposed to Morgan Barron moving all the way from 4th center to 2nd center?
Well, I think you have to ask the question, is that going to give you more offense, right? If the answer is yes, then do it, right, Drew? That's how I would answer your question, right? Like, if Scott O'Neill thinks that moving Adam Lowry up to the second line and replacing Nemesnikov, I guess I'm not sure, Drew, if then you're just flip-flopping and then Nemesnikov is centering the 3rd line, or Barron is moving up to the 3rd line and then Nemesnikov is centering the 4th line. I'm not sure if it's just a straight flip that you're talking about. But
I think coaches are reticent to make massive switches to their forward lines where every line goes through the blender before the game. So
I agree with that.
In this thought exercise, because that's all it is a thought exercise, I wouldn't be
Drew,
surprised.
you are our thought leader, so that's why we need a thought exercise. Please,
you,
leader,
exactly.
continue.
Yes, thought leader sounds way better than cult leader, but I'll take either or, as the circumstances dictate. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was a straight swap of Lowry and Nemesnikov rather than a 3-person change, moving Barron and then Nemesnikov and Lowry and all sorts of moving pieces. Maybe just a straight trade could be in the cards for the Jets, as again, this thought exercise that we're going through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, guys, that regardless if you see a switch on the second line or a third line, the Jets have got to get a little bit greasier here, and they've got to go to the net a little harder and create a little bit more in the offensive zone. Like, I realized, as Dave said, there's a recency bias here. So everybody's focusing on what happened in game 3. But I think even in games 1 and 2, you saw it a little bit, but I want to see those lines sustain a little bit more pressure. I said it earlier, but I think we've got to see more, right? Like, it was really the Scheifele, Connor, Iafallo show in the first 2 games, guys. I'm not saying that, the line was terrible. We talked to Kenny Wiebe about Niederreiter in the second game. He obviously, does a lot of great things defensively, but again, this line has to produce goals. Like, this is your top 6. And so whether it's Nemesnikov up the middle on that second line, or if O'Neill decides to switch Adam Lowry, I don't think that's going to happen, by the way, Drew. We'll wait and see what happens. Again, though, if we're talking about this after 4 games, like if this second line still isn't clicking after 4 games, then I would think there's more likely going to be a switch. Obviously, Gabe Velarde's return could impact that. But, I mean, it's 3 games now where this line, again, Cole Perfetti's been fine. And obviously, he should have got the power play goal in game 3. We all agree with that. It wasn't conclusive enough. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the second line to deliver in game 4. Obviously, whether the Jets ultimately win game 4, it's not going to be completely dependent on the second line. But as the series progresses, that line's got to contribute.
Well, to Ezzy's point about it, the Jets still have that 2-1 lead. If you go and you make sort of significant changes to your forward alignment, Dave, and it doesn't work, have you put yourself even further behind the 8 ball?
Yes.
By doing that? Do you maybe wait to see if it's do you give them this game, or at least a significant portion of this game, to see if they can start to generate? Or has that become that you're now in a best of 3 series and then you're trying to make the changes?
No, because I mean, look, one thing we've seen with the Jets this year is that they're never really out of games. I mean, it's game 3 aside, obviously, but this is a team that even if they were down 2-0 or 1-0 or 3-1, I don't necessarily think they're out of hockey games. And again, Eddie's 100% right. I mean, they need to change the focus. They need to tilt the ice. They need to put the pressure back on the St. Louis Blues, because they weren't very effective in that regard. And that's going to require guys to, pick themselves up and look themselves in the mirror and be like, we need to be better. I mean, was the 10% better, 15% better, all BS talk that it sounds good in the media, but are you not going to do it? Well, look, they did it during the regular season. And I think that the folks sometimes, gloss over that as if it's not a big deal. What this team accomplished this year in the regular season, when many pundits didn't even predict them to be a playoff team, was impressive. So you have that muscle memory, if you will, of what this team was effectively for 82 regular season games. Now, again, obviously they've had guys in and out of the lineup, and missing Gabriel Velarde and missing Nikolai Ehlers are big holes to fill. Like, we're just glossing over the fact that you're, as Paulie mentioned, losing over 50 goals from your team. That's not insignificant. So, I mean, again, look, is Nino Niederreiter ideally a second line winger? I don't think so. Not in anybody's wildest imaginations would you have Nino Niederreiter in that role. And look, Adam Lowry's effectively a second line center anyways. Like, we're talking about moving him up to the second line. He plays more minutes than anybody else. He is your second line center. So, I mean,
but with an expectation of more offense,
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, if you really want to, what you could do is you could really flip Perfetti with Appleton, and then maybe give that line, the second line, which is effectively the second line, a little more offense than what Mason Appleton's providing, and then make that other one. I don't know what they'd be, though. That's the problem. They wouldn't really have much of an identity with Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, and Appleton.
Who's driving that line? I don't know if there's anybody driving that line.
That's the problem. So it's not super effective, but I mean, I guess if you're getting the additional offense, then maybe if that line can just hold its own, then that's what you're hoping for, right? Against the third and fourth lines of the Blues, but you don't have last change, which is a bit of a problem, right? Which is why I think that he's going to be more likely to stick with the ones that he's got. I just think that, again, like I said, it's about being able to control the play. And one thing that the Jets haven't done especially in that third game, is be able to control the pace of the play. So you have to go and you have to change that narrative. And again, I don't know. I mean, the biggest unknown, and we won't unfortunately know during the show, so it leaves us doing a lot of speculating, boys, is really just Gabriel Velarde. I mean, he's the great unknown. We know Nikolai Ehlers isn't an option. He's obviously not even on the road trip. So if Gabriel Velarde's there, or let's be realistic, maybe Gabriel Velarde's just there as a shield. With Scott Arniel's words to us before the team left, like when he was asked about Velarde's status and how he doesn't say, of course, he just says, are you gonna be at practice? You'll see tomorrow. So, I mean, it could just be that the Jets have no intention of playing Velarde. They want him on the road so they can be with the strength and conditioning coaches and working with the team. But maybe we don't, that's the only thing. We don't know. All we're doing is, unfortunately, is a little bit of speculating. So we'll see how that kind of plays out.
Let's shift our focus to the back end, where, of course, Dylan DeMello missed the game on Thursday night due to the illness. Now, I know there's a lot of concern. Anytime you hear illness, you think flu bug. Is it going through the team? We don't know. We might get some more insight when they hit the ice for practice in a few hours' time. If there's other guys missing, that should probably allow you to read the tea leaves. If DeMello's back there, I think we all know what the deep pairings are going to be. Do you see any changes to the defense? We've seen some struggles. Luke Schenn, is certainly taking some minor penalties. Maybe he's been struggling a little bit in this series. If DeMello isn't in the lineup, let's start there. If DeMello is not in the lineup or not on the ice for practice and not going to play tomorrow, how do you see the Jets aligning their defense? Because it certainly looked like Morrissey, Pionk, Schenn and Samberg, Miller and Stanley. Well, it didn't look like Schenn or Pionk looked very comfortable in those roles, in those elevated positions.
Right. And I think, we can't understate, I should say, Dylan DeMello's absence, right? It's your top pairing right side defenseman. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you're ranking defensemen, obviously Josh Morrissey's at the top, and I would put Dylan Samberg as the second best defenseman, but still you're talking about your third best defenseman in Dylan DeMello, right? So I just wanted to mention that. I think that's just as key of a loss, really, as Gabe Velarde or Nikolai Ehlers, obviously in a different way. It's the defensive side of the game. But look, I don't think Luke Schenn was very good on the second pair on last game. And so for me, the change would be Colin Miller, elevating him, and then going back to Stanley and Schenn. And that's obviously a pairing that we've seen more so, right? Those guys have played since Luke Schenn was acquired. We're not talking about 5 years playing together, guys, right. But we're talking about several games. So I could see I thought Colin Miller in a 7-2 loss was very solid for a guy who wasn't in the lineup for the first couple of games. But I mean, the Jets have got to find a way to contain the Thomas, Snuggerud, Buchnevich line, right, guys? Like, that's a tough line. You got to make sure that you're playing those guys tight. You're playing them physically. You're not giving them too much time and space. I think as a whole, guys, the Jets have got to move the puck quicker out of their own zone. Obviously, the Blues forecheck is presenting a challenge, which many teams, every team in the NHL wants to establish a forecheck. Every team wants to put pressure on the other team's defense.
Every team
right?
wants to draft and develop.
Exactly. Every team wants to draft and develop. Every team wants to win. But that's something that I thought the Jets at times were spending too much time in their own zone. Mm-hmm. And their passing was not the best in game 3. And so I think Colin Miller is an option to move up with Dylan Samberg. That's an option Scott Arniel has. But hopefully Dylan DeMello is going to be ready to go, right, guys? Like, there was some speculation that it was something else aside from an illness. We're just going with what the coaching staff told us. And I think, Dave, that was because he didn't practice on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. That's why people were speculating that it was maybe something else aside from an illness. But again, we're not going to bring out the conspiracy theories. Hopefully Dylan DeMello is going to be ready to go. If he isn't ready to go, though, I mean, the Jets have capable defensemen, right? Like, again, Luke Schenn is not Dylan DeMello, but he's got to be better. If he's playing in a second pairing role, he's got to be better than he was in game 3.
Could you see the Jets, if DeMello's healthy, Dave,
mm-hmm.
Which again, we'll know more in a few hours' time, could you see them, even making additional changes beyond that? Or do you think that the 6D with DeMello are pretty well established at this point in time? Did Colin Miller give the Jets any thought to changing up the 6 defense that are going to play in this game if DeMello's at full health?
I mean, I think he gave them something to think about. I thought he was pretty good in the role he gets, and he's abrasive, and he has a lot of playoff experience, right? He went on the long run with the Vegas Golden Knights back after the series with the Winnipeg Jets. So he went on that. I think he played 20 games that year with the Golden Knights. So he's got a lot of playoff experience. But
especially in a puck moving where the Jets have been struggling to move the puck out of their own zone.
Well, and also
Stanley and Shen, that would be a drawback that they have.
Well, especially when you don't have last change, especially when the other coaching staff gets to effectively decide the matchups. That to me is where, you saw the exposure of Luke Shen. I mean, look, that hit he took that led to the 5th goal, I think it was. He got pasted into the boards, got up, had no energy to get back. And, that was his man in front, which led
even
to the
more
again.
So. Sorry, Dave, but even more so before he took the hit. He had the puck on his stick, and I think the forwards probably blew the zone too quick, and they didn't help him with an easy breakout pass. But to me, there was a little bit of indecisiveness there when he had the puck on his stick that led to the opportunity for the strong body check, strong forecheck, and turnover.
Right, and so that's why, I mean, again, like, what have I said all along? I like Luke Shen as a third pairing option, but I think when you move him up, he becomes less effective. When you have, and one of the things we talked about, Drew, I thought, and I think you were right, is that I was surprised that Scott Arniel made the wholesale changes with all the lines. To move Neil Pionk up, to move Luke Shen up, and then to insert Colin Miller. Now you've changed all 3 of your D pairs. And it's not to say that these guys haven't played with each other, but it would have been a lot easier just to move Colin Miller into that Dylan DeMello spot, leave your other pairings the way they were, and it's a little more familiarity, especially, with the way, again, like I said, like asking, I think Colin Miller, especially in one game, he hasn't been playing a ton, so he probably has a lot of energy to get him into that role. I know it's asking a lot, but again, that I think would have been more effective. It's easy to say now after the fact, right, Ezzy? But ultimately, I'm hard pressed to see a team that's is prepared to make a lot of changes, because I really think they'll look at that and they'll say, look, the egg is on us collectively. And Connor Hellebuck, I will say, has pointed this out throughout the course of this year, boys, that, he said, even though he's been better and his numbers are better, a lot of that is because of the structure this team played with. And they didn't play with that same structure in game 3. And so we'll see if they can return to that sort of normal structure for them and be effective in that regard. Then it shouldn't matter who the personnel are, really, because it really, you can pull a guy in and pull a guy out. The structure doesn't change. These guys they all know the system. Every single player in this organization knows the system the Jets play in. And so from that perspective, you should be able to be effective. It's just a question of, like, Drew, I think you opened the show with it, that idea of making adjustments. And Scott Arniel can bristle all he wants. The fact of the matter is his team needs to make adjustments, because we know Jim Montgomery is a heck of a good coach. And he does look, I mean, you don't need to look much further than what he's been able to do with a team out of the Four Nations break, a team that was left for dead. And he, as we had Jeremy Rutherford on a month ago or whatever it was, and then impromptu a couple of last week, what he's been able to do with this team and how he was able to change a team from the way they were to the way they are. So he was capable of doing it on a long-term basis, throughout the season, but he's also able to do it short-term. So we'll see how Scott Arniel adjusts now that his coaching staff, or now that his team found themselves down after game 3.
Questions galore. Harnarayan Singh, who is on the play-by-play broadcast on the Sportsnet broadcast, will join us next to discuss more about the Jets and the Blues and get more insight into the questions that are being posed. Stay with us. Bottom of hour number 2. It is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's presented by Play Now. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we have some breaking news for you on this morning edition of the programming. We have a start time for Game 5 now on Wednesday night between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. It is going to be a late one, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, which means closer to 8:50 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday night. So I'm not surprised by that time frame. It was sort of what we were expecting, especially after we had got a Game 5 between the Capitals and the Canadiens, and are likely to get a Game 5 between the Panthers and the Lightning. So the Habs and the Capitals are going to be at 6 o'clock Central. The Panthers and the Lightning, if necessary, are going to be at 6:30 p.m. Central. And the Winnipeg Jets, St. Louis Blues, Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, which is really 8:45 p.m. Central Time. So there you go. You can plan your Wednesday night accordingly. It's going to be a late one. That means we'll be at City Place for the Illegal Curve pregame show starting at 6:30 p.m. So if you're heading downtown to the street party, if you're heading downtown into the rink, be sure to stop by City Place, second floor, food court. Look for the giant Illegal Curve poster. You can't miss us. We'll be there starting 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday night for the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. The pregame show, followed by the game, followed by a late night edition of the Illegal Curve post-game show. So take your naps early on Wednesday, because it's going to be a late game on late night on Wednesday night. So there's some breaking news coming your way this morning.
Boys, we're obviously getting all of the different start times. We're getting 5 o'clock. We're getting 8:30. We're getting noon. The only start time we haven't had is like 2 o'clock. But I don't
or 7.
Yeah, exactly. Or a normal 7 o'clock start time. But yeah, it's always good to know, because Jets fans want to plan their lives accordingly. So there we go.
There we go. Indeed, we're thrilled to welcome to the program Harnarayan Singh joins us on the show. He's got the play-by-play call of this entire Jets and Blues series. Harnarayan, I'm not sure if you just got the email as well, but we have a start time for Wednesday's game, 8:30 p.m. Central Time for Wednesday's Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues. Just from a broadcaster's perspective, all these different start times, especially tomorrow's 12 noon start time, how does that impact your preparation, if at all?
Yeah, you know what? It can really throw you for a loop because you're kind of usually setting your routines of going to the morning skates, having the media avails, the discussions with the players and the coaches, and then coming back and kind of really taking a deep dive into the stats and the storylines, preparing as much as you can for the game. And then, sometimes the broadcasters even follow some of the players with an afternoon nap. So I know with that 8:30 start time, that will definitely be happening. I am already concerned about the 12 o'clock start time for tomorrow because I'm like, holy, I got to get my sleep schedule set so that you want to have multiple alarms ready. So it can throw you for a loop. I know some of the players like it that in terms of that you can just get up and right away go. But when it's all over the place, it is wild. But what does help in this case is how spread out it is. I know my colleague Scott Oak on the broadcast was joking that himself and John Garrett might be in assisted living by the time the series is over because of how spread out it is. And, I'm kind of a youngin in there and I had to come up with something to say there. And I just was like, well, I'm working with some wily veterans, aren't I?
And it was a good rebuttal to Scott's one-liner there. Harnarayan, obviously Game 4 going tomorrow afternoon, as we've touched on, through 3 games of this series. Obviously, Game 3 went the Blues' way dramatically. The first 2 games were much closer, much tighter. The Jets getting third period goals to take the leads in those games. From your perspective, from your vantage point high above the ice surface, what have you seen so far through the first 3 games of this playoff matchup?
Well, the starts have really gone in the Blues' favor. And as the games have gone on, especially games 1 and 2, the Jets were finally able to get to their game. So that's I don't want to hit the panic button at all, but there is a little bit of concern going into Game 4, and that's because the Blues have made adjustments, and the playoffs are about adjustments, right? And so now it's the Jets' turn. They haven't had to make any adjustments as of yet, other than within the game, and they've been able to get to their game. But in Game 3, they weren't able to much at all, and so I just think that the concern is that the Blues have that extended home win streak. They have a ton of confidence playing in St. Louis. So this is the first real big piece of adversity for the Jets. Now, if for everyone listening to this and watching this, you've been following the Jets all season long, and this is a new situation. Like, there hasn't really been too much of a shellacking and during the regular season, maybe just a one-off. And this is the test to see if this is going to be a one-off or not. What I've seen, though, is that, players like on the Blues, like Robert Thomas, and their main players right now, like Colton Parayko, these guys were not the big guns for the Blues the last time the Blues were in the playoffs. So if you remember, Robert Thomas, the last time he would have been in the playoffs, 2022, this team would have had Tarasenko, O'Reilly, they would have had a lot of more of a veteran presence. Colton Parayko would have had a number of other defensemen there along with him, and he would have been on the second pairing. So I think the first 2 games was a bit of an introduction for the Blues and the Blues' new leadership. And so now, though, that they've gotten a taste of it, they're becoming a little more comfortable. And so the Jets are going to have to find a way to match the urgency and desperation that the Blues came out with in Game 3, and they'll have to find that pretty quickly here.
Harnarayan, how impressed have you been with Cam Fowler? Because I don't think a lot of people had Fowler putting up 5 points in one game on their bingo card when he was acquired back in December. I think a lot of people said, okay, this is a nice trade for St. Louis. Fowler gets to continue his NHL career, but he's obviously been a huge key for the Blues. He leads them in points after 3 games.
I'm sure you guys saw Jim Montgomery saying to him after the games the other night that, thank God you're not in Anaheim anymore. Yeah, quite an indictment on the Ducks organization there. But Cam Fowler is what an addition for Doug Armstrong to bring him in, and to bring him in that early in the season. I mean, that's especially for a player who hasn't ever been traded before. The more time you have to acclimate to a new team, that's really important. But he's been all over the ice. He's playing with a ton of confidence, a ton of poise, and he is their key cog in terms of mobility for the defense, in terms of the offensive side of the game. And, he's led the Blues defense in points since his arrival. And I just think that it was a fabulous addition, very impressive. But we're seeing him come into his own now. This guy hasn't been in the playoffs for a long, long time. And the Anaheim Ducks have been out of the picture in terms of relevancy for a long, long time. And so, Cam Fowler arriving at the Blues. This was an interesting team too, because they didn't do a rebuild. Like after winning the Cup, and they've sent off a number of veterans, they didn't do a rebuild, but just a little bit of a switch up here, and they still have managed to bring in complementary pieces, and they also have some youth too. So kudos to Doug Armstrong for being able to manage all of that.
Ryan, we don't know what the Jets are going to look like tomorrow, of course, because they're not practicing till 1:30. So we'll be able to see what happens with Gabriel Velarde and that sort of thing. But from your perspective, assuming that everything remains the same, who do you see on this team as kind of needing to take that next step, and that step up, I should say, and kind of be the guy for the Jets?
Yeah, it's one of those storylines that I'm sure you guys have touched on, especially near the trade deadline. And for me, it's the second line of Nemesnikov and currently Niederreiter and Perfetti that need to find a way to get a goal, or a few of them, for the Jets. And this is something that, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, who's done a marvelous job, all of the re-signings that have happened here with the Jets recently, it's quite exceptional that they've been able to retain so many players at such good money. But the one part of it that I think everybody is going to really have to take a strong look at is the need for a second line center and for secondary scoring. And for Vlad Nemesnikov, if it's been one goal in 32 games, it's unfortunately not going to cut it. And in the playoffs, especially if you've lost Velarde and Ehlers in your top six, you really need that second line to show up. And yes, they get offensive zone time. Yes, they get opportunities, but it's about capitalizing on those opportunities. And when you see other teams like Colorado who were able to get the Brock Nelson, or even Toronto getting a Scott Lawton, this was it's not for a lack of trying, of course. And, I'm not in those conversations in the rooms. And we've heard many times that it's, harder to land players in Winnipeg too, although that should hopefully be changing. But it is a bit of a concern for me in terms of with not having Ehlers and Velarde. I think it stands out a lot more. For Nemesnikov, and also adding size to that line too. That would have been something. If this is the year, I think this was the year to do it, to kind of put all your chips in. And so we'll have to see, and that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Because if they were even going for Braden Shen, let's look at it that way. If they were trying to unite these Shen brothers, Braden Shen's the second line center for the Blues. Just imagine how he would look on the Jets, right? That would just make the Jets, their depth even that much more powerful. There's been so much talk about the depth and how the Jets have great depth. The coaches, management, players talking about it. Well, this is the test now, because I do think they have depth on the blue line. Although, injuries to the DeMello thing, it kind of threw everything, a little lack of cohesion at times. Mm-hmm. If Sandberg is out, it's a big deal. But Miller, I like how he came in and he was crushing those pucks and just trying to get them on net. A simple game. It reminds me of Michael Stone with the Flames. He was always the seventh defenseman and just came in and started hammering pucks to the net, and it worked for him all the time. But that's my concern, the second line there and the second line scoring, and they kind of really need to step up their game and get that going.
Harnarayan Singh is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday morning. The Jets and the Blues game 4 tomorrow afternoon. Harnarayan will, of course, be on the call with John Garrett. where do you fall on the sort of the question about adjustments, and not necessarily strategic adjustments, but roster adjustments? We spent a lot of time talking about that this morning. We know that the Blues made some changes, they made some roster changes, they made some lineup juggling, and it paid off in Game 3. If you're Scott Arniel, do you look to do something similar, or do you maybe let your lines simmer, chalk Game 3 up to a bad performance, and see if they can bounce back like they have so well all season long?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in terms of the forward depth and the fourth line, I don't think you change much there because Anderson Dolan's speed is what led to that goal, and Barron has been good in that center spot, and as has Gustafsson. So I don't think you're changing much in terms of the forwards. You could maybe consider bringing in, a different defenseman, but then despite Logan Stanley having, a few hiccups the last game, we all know what he did in Game 2. And I think that Stanley and Schenn as a pairing, there has been an intimidation factor there in terms of their size and physicality. So I think for me, if I'm Scott Arniel, it's more about just tweaking a few things in game, and they were able to do that from Game 1 to 2 on the penalty kill, where Scott Arniel even admitted that the team was over aggressive on the penalty kill, a few adjustments here and there. I think that's what they need to do from Game 3 to Game 4 now, is be able to figure out how to eat up some of the middle of the ice, all that room that the Blues were able to get to, and all that ice they were able to get to, how to manage that. And so I think that's what will be the better bet. And, the adjustments that the Jets and the Blues have made in these games in terms of whether they're carrying the puck in or dumping it in, or allowing Binnington or Hellebuck to play it or not to play it, and all that kind of in-game stuff. That stuff it's not only game to game, but it's even within those TV timeouts. It's within the intermissions. So I think Scott Arniel, he's a smart coach. He knows his hockey, and I think we'll see some of those adjustments happening, most likely, in my opinion, with the same lineup.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Harnarayan. And I wanted to ask you about the goaltending. You just mentioned Connor Hellebuck. He obviously was not great in Game 1, excellent in Game 2, and then we all know what happened in Game 3, just a very un-Hellebuck-like performance. And I think you'd agree, we all expect him to be better in Game 4. The question I wanted to ask you, though, is can the Jets win this series without Hellebuck being better than Binnington? Because Binnington obviously got the best of Hellebuck in the Four Nations, and he's been excellent since the Four Nations break. But what is your kind of assessment on that? Because I think you'd agree we haven't seen the best of Hellebuck so far, maybe with the exception of early in Game 2.
Yeah, I think that definitely Hellebuck has another level that he can get to. And, the regular season numbers, they're incomparable to what we're seeing in the playoffs. So there is something there. However, as much attention as being given to that mistake by Hellebuck in Game 3, I mean, how much help did he get from his teammates? I mean, he's immediately, he looks one way and there's a Blues player coming, and then the other way there's another Blues player coming. Where were the Jets, and where were, is any Jets player hollering at him to let him know? And I think it's just uncharacteristic there of the Jets in total of that game. They were flat. There was so many tendencies in that game that we are not used to seeing from the Jets. So yes, he made a glaring error there, which led to a goal, and it killed the momentum that the Jets were starting to get after they scored their goal. But the team was completely off. And so I don't know how much you can really pinpoint that loss on just Hellebuck. I mean, it's hard for me to blame him for everything there. And I just feel that when the team is on and when the team is playing their style and they are playing their game, then, Hellebuck is completely fine too. So I think it was just off the rails. And that's not just to say that, it's, the Jets just didn't show up. You do have to give credit to the Blues as well. But specifically to the goaltending, I might not be as concerned about Hellebuck as some of the people who are jumping off the bandwagon right now. It was a blunder, but he also made some great saves too. And I think that, he'll be fine. And we all know his mental mindset and how confident he is. And I know it hasn't. There is concern because of what's happened in the previous playoffs, but so far in this series, I've still been, I think he's been good, but there is definitely another level that he can get to, and that's what the Blues were able to find. Right, they found another level. But desperation and urgency can do that to you, and I think we'll see more of that from the Jets here in Game 4.
No, Ryan, one of the questions we've been talking about or one of the themes is adjustments. And how important will it be to adjust to the officiating? Because it seems like the standard has become, especially in this first round, very marginal. And so how important will that be? Because the Jets PK has not been very effective, gave up 3 power play goals in that last game on 8 opportunities, but 8 opportunities is a big number. And I know the third period went a bit off the rails, but how important is that going to be for the Jets in Game 4 to be a lot more disciplined?
Yeah, it definitely is something to think about, especially considering the amount of power play goals that they've given up. So it's 6 power play goals now in 3 games. The penalty kill, I think Game 2 definitely a better, but this is a fascinating one because the Jets are coming in after having the top power play in the regular season, and they were winning the special teams battle quite often. But yeah, they do have to consider that. And I think with the officiating, you hear the league defend the notion that the penalties are not called the same in the regular season versus the playoffs. The league actually tries to come out with numbers and tries to defend it that, we are calling the amount of penalties or the same types of penalties in the playoffs. And that's been part of the league's way of, ensuring there's enough offense and just making sure there's consistency. And so I think that the Jets have to be concerned about that, especially given how potent the Blues power play has been. And there will be more adjustments, I think. But I think also, overall, if you zoom out a bit, not just on the special teams, but a little adversity doesn't hurt. And I think, if you're just kind of piling through everybody, and if it's a 4-game sweep where it's super easy, and then you might have way too much time off, and then you're not able to get it going in the next round. There's also, you don't want players to, you need a little reminder that it's not going to be so easy to get through this, right? And so a little bit of adversity doesn't hurt. And so I think the Jets will be able to make some of those adjustments, especially on the PK.
Last one for you, Harnarayan. We started with how difficult it is to broadcast a game at all these different start times and 12 noon. How does it adjust your call when you have to do it in front of a frenzied crowd like we see at the Whiteout or like we saw in St. Louis because they were loud for Game 3? From the broadcasting perspective, does it change how you call the game? Is it easier? Is it harder? Obviously, the excitement and the energy will impact your call. How do you sort of harness the crowd's energy and translate that to the on-air broadcast?
Yeah, it's definitely something that makes it extremely exciting, and the vibe is just so powerful, and I think it does translate to the call. I mean, there's an automatic adjustment from regular season to playoffs, and there's nothing like the vibe in the arena in the playoffs, right? And you feed off that energy. And I think it definitely translates in terms of like right when the puck is dropped, you're already at a level much higher than what you were in terms of intensity and excitement than the regular season. And definitely it carries through. It makes a big difference. And, part of it is also that it's just so loud in there that you even have your own headset volume cranked just so you can hear your producers say we're going to commercial, or there's all sorts of stuff. Like I thought I was going to need hearing aids after these last few games, right? It's super loud in there, but there's also nothing like it. And I look forward to the playoffs so much. Like, this is my favorite time of the year. Spring is in the air, and the fresh cut grass eventually here once the things get green in Winnipeg as well. But the smell of the grass and just the vibe of the playoffs, there's nothing that can replicate it. And I think it definitely has an impact in the call, throughout the game, right from the drop of the puck.
Harnarayan, one more. Drew lied. I wanted to ask you about working with John Garrett, because I know speaking to a lot of people and listening to seeing the chat, and maybe we'll post a few of the comments, but folks are absolutely loving you and John Garrett. Obviously, you've worked with other color guys. Louis DeBrusque obviously stands out, but what's it like to work with the guy known as Cheech? Because he's obviously a legend in Canadian sportscasting.
Oh my, he is a hoot. And if you love listening to him on the air, just imagine the stories at dinners. Oh my goodness. Like, this guy has worked with everybody in the industry. He's been at it for I don't know how many decades. And it's hilarious because I'm sometimes being labeled an ageist now, because it's just like, I want to have a deep dive into, okay, what happened here? How many decades ago? And it's a blast. He's hilarious, but he still, despite his age, he has a great eye for the game. He's a great broadcaster, a ton of passion, a great sense of humor. And just, I don't think there's anybody I've ever met in the industry who has anything bad to say about this guy. Like, everybody loves him. He walks into an arena, the coaches, even like the series official here, Rob Schick, who's for the linesmen and for the referees, they have a great rapport. All the goalie coaches and stuff. It's just amazing to see. But he's been a blast to hang out with too. And I'm joking with him. I'm like, I didn't realize I'd be having this much fun hanging out with a 70-year-old. Right? Yeah, but it's been absolutely a blast, and I look forward to it, as much as the games that we're calling together, but just even spending time with him and hearing all the stories and the experiences and stuff, and can't get enough of it. So I'm really thoroughly enjoying it.
Well, we'll enjoy it again tomorrow afternoon, 12 noon. Harnarayan Singh and John Garrett on the call of Game 4 between the Jets and the Blues. Harnarayan, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight. We appreciate your call as well, and we look forward to it tomorrow afternoon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Take care. Have a great
Cheers.
Saturday. Thanks so much. Great interview. Great catching up with Harnarayan. Great interviews today. Paul Edmonds joined us in hour number 1. So in case you missed any of that, that is also available on the podcast and on the instant replay of this, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you're just joining us and you missed the announcement, Game 5 is 8:30 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday.
Dave, Drew's talking about that start time as if it's like a breaking trade. Like, what I mean?
Well, people don't know. People
also, I'm a little bit concerned that someone's joining us an hour and 55 minutes into the show, but
well, you never know. You got to look. I got to reset. I got to recap for the audience.
Sure.
I know what I'm doing. Let the host do the hosting. Thank you very much.
That sounds like a guy who has to adjust his nap schedule for Wednesday. That's what that sounds like.
No question about that. But what I was going to say more importantly is that the Illegal Curve pregame show will be at 6:30 p.m. at downtown City Place, 2nd floor in the food court. You can't miss us. Look for the Illegal Curve poster and make sure that City Place is on your destination of the go-to spots before Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues. But of course, before Game 5, Game 4 tomorrow afternoon, 12 noon between the Jets and the Blues, which means post-game show. Let's assume, though, overtime around 3 o'clock Central Time. We'll be back tomorrow with the Illegal Curve post-game show. Are the Jets up 3-1, or is it a best-of-3 series? We'll discuss that tomorrow in detail on the Illegal Curve post-game show. Couple minutes before we wrap up this morning's edition of the show.
That's not true. Manny's been here the whole time. I know Manny's been here.
He's making a joke. Any thoughts on the other 7 playoff series so far? Because we haven't touched on them at all so far. We have, I guess, the Leafs.
The games yesterday were awesome. That Montreal, I'm just saying, Montreal Washington was great. Montreal,
they're still on the bench. It was old school.
Well, first, I was just gonna say, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that where Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson, it's the end of the period. Montreal has the lift because he just scored the 3-2 goal, and then somehow they're all milling about, and the next thing you know, Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson are actually in the bench, and the best was Carberry.
Old-time hockey, Dave. Old-time hockey.
Well, usually old-time hockey is them all coming off the bench, but literally guys going on the bench to fight is something that's a bit unusual. The best was the Caps coaching staff were kind of in the front part of it, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, these guys are coming at us. We got to go back. So that was pretty insane. And that Oilers that Oilers Kings game, like I didn't watch the whole thing, but I definitely watched like the second and
Worst
third periods.
challenge ever.
Oh,
Well,
awful
the challenge itself
by
was like, I
Jim
was like,
Hillier. Awful.
first of all, I'm like, old Jets, old friend of the Jets, Evander Kane gets the 4-4 goal. I mean, it was it's such a roller coaster of emotions for Oilers fans. And I got to say that I put this out there. The whiteout, like watching these games now that we're watching other teams play in their first round series, there really is nothing. You do appreciate how much better the whiteout looks visually. I mean, obviously they sound great. All the arenas sound good, but like the visual of all the fans in one uniform color, the only one I thought would match it would be Edmonton, because they all tend to during the regular season as well, wear essentially the same color and always have that uniform look. And I love the atmosphere in Edmonton. I mean, I know Jets, the old Smythe Division rivalry doesn't allow to say that, but they have a great crowd in Edmonton. The Moss Pit is awesome outside. And yeah, that game was just a roller coaster of emotions, because Edmonton's like, okay, we got a 2-0 lead. Oh, wait, now we're down. Then we tie it. Oh, wait, we're down again. And then, they do what they do. And yeah, terrible challenge. But that was such an exciting game. And the fans were loving it in Edmonton.
I'm with Dave, though. Just it's a reminder this time of year how there's just nothing comparable to the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, or just the Stanley Cup playoffs in general, guys. And we didn't even talk about my big win for my Devils, winning in overtime. I realize they're still down 2-1, but
that series is over, Ezzy. Sorry, I hate to rain on your parade.
No, but I mean, it's nice that they got a win in front of their home crowd, right? Like, so got to mention that as well. But yeah, the LA Edmonton series, I mean, just the amount of goals in that series, and how many series guys are 2-1 right now? 7 of 8 series right now,
except for Toronto and Ottawa,
are 2-1, right? So it just shows you how much parity there is in the league. And I mean, how exciting these series are. There's only really one series that's over, and that's obviously, as Drew just mentioned, the Toronto-Ottawa series. But I'm fascinated by the Colorado-Dallas series, right? Like, no Miro Heiskanen and no Jason Robertson, and the Stars are up 2-1. Gabe Landeskog is back in the lineup for the Avalanche. I still think that series is going 6 or 7 games.
Yeah,
I'll be surprised if
how about Minnesota up 2-1 on Vegas?
Exactly, that's a surprise, right? Minnesota, obviously, Kirill Kaprizov is playing out of his mind right now.
Matt Boldy,
and Matt Boldy's been phenomenal, right? So the first round is just the best. I don't care what anybody says.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It has been a lot of fun. We look forward to joining you.
Drew,
go ahead, Dave.
I mean, we've talked about the first round, but we got to talk about the conference finals. Now you're thinking, what conference finals? The OHL and WHL conference finals, Drew Mindell.
Go for it.
Jacob Julian, 2023 fifth rounder. His London Knights, Ezzy, have not lost a game in the playoffs. They won yesterday. They're 9-0. He had an assist, a primary assist. It was on the 5th goal.
So what you're saying when they keep saying that teams don't go 16-0, they're not talking about the London Knights.
They're definitely not talking about, well, so far they're not talking about those London Knights who are 9-0, and equaling them with wins is Colby Barlow, 2023 first rounder, and his Oshawa Generals. They too won. They defeated, I believe, Barrie. So they are up 1-0 in their Eastern Conference final. And then switching over to the Eastern Conference final in the WHL, Braden Yager was having Yager bombs yesterday with a big goal, but it wasn't enough to defeat Medicine Hat. So Medicine Hat has a 1-0 lead in that series.
Don't you think they need to rename the leagues in the WHL? That they shouldn't have an Eastern division in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah, I've always found that funny.
Yeah, you need a better name.
Why? I mean, there's the Western teams, like the British Columbia teams, the Washington-based teams.
I understand it, Dave. I mean, I understand why they're called the Eastern-based teams, but I think you could tweak that a little bit. It's and figure out better names for it. Maybe.
But if you think about it, it's based out of Calgary, and there's teams that are east of Calgary, and teams are west of Calgary.
I understand the concept.
I'm not sure you do.
I'm just saying it could be a better. They could come up with better names.
Well, what would they be though?
It's not for me
like
to
decide. The Pacific in the north, or the Pacific.
I think you'd probably call it something like the Prairie Division.
Yeah,
there you go, something like that. Something
better. I got one, Drew. How about east of the mountains and west of the mountains?
That's even a little bit better.
Or just call it, instead of the Eastern Division, just call it the Flat Division.
That again, these are better suggestions than I just think there's something you can do there that would be add a little bit of color to something rather than just the Eastern Division of the Western Hockey League. To me, it's a little bit redundant, is all it is. But that's more for an off-season show topic, I'd say, than a middle of the playoffs show topic.
Sure.
But that's it for us on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thank you to all of you for joining us. Great audience tonight, as always. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on, and tell your friends and tell your family the best place to be on Saturday mornings after each and every Winnipeg Jets game and before home playoff games is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. IllegalCurve.com will have the Jets practice report coming up in a couple of hours' time. So make sure you keep it locked to our social media platforms and the website for all the latest about the Winnipeg Jets as they head to the ice in St. Louis ahead of tomorrow's Game 4 between the Jets and the Blues. We remind everybody the post-game show tomorrow, the Illegal Curve post-game show, right around 3 o'clock Central Time, give or take a couple minutes. If there's an overtime, obviously it's a little delayed, but it'll be right around there. We look forward to seeing everybody back here to talk about the series, whether it be 2-2 or whether it be 3-1 in the Winnipeg Jets' favor. A big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the Saturday show, the post-game show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Boston Pizza, we were there on Thursday night, as Phyllis has mentioned up on the screen. Great seeing so many of you live and in person. On Thursday, Boston Pizza is a big sponsor of ours. In the same parking lot as Boston Pizza is our friends at Holt Dental. We thank them for their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Seagram's, they sponsor the shot of the game. We'll be giving that away after tomorrow's Jets Blues game. We remind everyone, John Randall, Chris Carter, Minnesota Vikings legends, they're coming to Winnipeg as part of the 2025 Rady JCC Sports Dinner. We are a proud media sponsor of that. Tickets available, radyjcc.com. Our friends at City Place will be there for Game 5 next Wednesday for the pregame show. Be sure that you are there as well. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. If you're looking for a place to go tonight, Jordan Jensen is in town. I'm reliably informed there's like 4 tickets left.
It was packed last night, Drew. I drove by and like it was like out. It was jam packed. That people were into the parking lot. The lineup was so big.
Yeah, Jordan Jensen performing before sold-out shows all weekend long. So there's a couple tickets left. RumorsComedyClub.com. And, of course, the title sponsor of all of our programming, our friends at Play Now. Big thanks to them for their continued support. A lot of fun on this Saturday morning. It's a beautiful Saturday outside. Go enjoy it, everyone. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mandel. Until tomorrow at around 3 o'clock, we say thanks so much for watching. And if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.